Alright guys, welcome back to West Virginia Commonplace. Today is a special episode. I kind of got a little time to do one. I haven't done one in quite some time. This one is about the pressures and stress that are involved with when you're doing a job. This podcast or doing anything else. One thing that you don't learn in school and one thing that you're not taught is how to handle all these pressures that go along with doing a podcast. The major thing that I ran into was who to align myself with and who not to align myself with. These were the hardest things inside of podcasting that kind of shook me up and almost made me want to quit at different times. For the simple fact that I aligned myself very early on with a great group of people, and I found out that some of these individuals had other intent, and to each his own. The thing in this community is we borrow from each other, and that's not what I'm saying. My idea is just as great as someone else's idea, and you may be able to take my idea and elevate it to another place. That's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about people that give you a false sensehood of you're doing this good, you're doing that good, and we all fall susceptible to it because when people are giving us praise, we really enjoy hearing that. And in my case, I had a few individuals around that, they were telling me things, and I looked at things, and they kind of added a little pressure to certain things that I was doing, and they didn't necessarily tell me to censor what I'm doing, but they said kind of take a step back and look at what you're doing, look how this is influencing this and how this is doing that. And examples of this is like, for instance, early on I was doing a lot more podcasts with musical guests and things like that. Well, later on down the road, it got to a point where there was no longer musical guests on the show because those things didn't translate into numbers or big numbers for me. So that was one of the pressures that someone put down on me. They were like, hey, and this is the good pressure. They're like, hey, look at this from what we're seeing. You got these numbers. You see that the women empowerment, the feel-good shows, and the things that just basically give people advice or just good commentary, funny things, just general life work better than always putting on a musician. So I waited through another season, put on a musician, go and watch those numbers again, because we try everything here and there. And then the other pressures come along with like advertising and like who is to say how things are supposed to actually go inside your podcast, like the structure. Do you do sounds for this and that? Do you do audiograms for your advertising? All these things that put pressure on you. I sat back. I did a lot of things that people told me just for trial and error, seeing how they worked. And some of these things worked out well and some of them didn't. And then the other pressure is keeping up the consistency. I didn't realize that I'm like a Tupac or Michael Jackson when it comes to doing my podcasting work. So I'll sit out here and I'll do 10 episodes in a week to have episodes for so long. And I didn't realize that I was pumping so hard that I literally recorded my show from this date forward, which it's April now. My show's recorded all the way till the second week of September because I just sat there and kept going and going. And I had got quality in some of that stuff. And some of the other things, I kind of rushed some of the things. And some of the things I wish I had taken time, went back and really thought about, hey, is this part of my podcast progress? And the people around me, I have people that listen. You have great people like Lisa Sheely that contribute very good insight. And you have Podcastagram also that give good insight into things. Dipping into Lisa Sheely for a second. Lisa Sheely is a prominent voice in my ear that I love to hear because she is a consensus on like podcasts, like what she would listen to. A good perspective on them. Podcastagram is a good influence on this also for the simple fact that he goes in and both of them too at the same time don't just stop listening to they don't just listen to one set of podcasts, they'll listen to any and every podcast and go from there. Me personally, I try to deal with all types of podcasts, but some are not my cup of tea, so I have other people that are involved that take care of these podcasts. But getting back in here to these pressures, pressure to keep your product from going stagnant. That's one of the hardest things that nobody teaches you about. And it's no, like, to me, there's no way to really teach it. To me, for my stuff not to stay stagnant, I got out here and promoted very hard. At the same time, I felt that, hey, the type of promotional energy that I have, I should pass this along to someone else so that they may use it, have my promotional arm, to help them. Because not everybody's getting out here and has a strong promotion. So, and like I said, the other thing that I had to learn along with this pressure is that this pressure sometimes is unwanted for other people. Not everybody wants my opinion. Not everybody wants my twist on how I can help out with the podcast, or certain ways certain things could be done. And with those type of pressures that I've placed on people in the past, people gotten upset and said some bad things and did this, and that. And I kind of had to step back and be like, hey man, I had a good friend, a lady in Massachusetts. She talked to me for a little bit and kind of got me straight on that whole deal of putting pressure on everything and having everything just go wild like it did in January for me, because I thought I was helping somebody else. And next thing you know, that pressure that I put on them, which I didn't think was pressure, I just thought it was simple advice, that pressure turned them another way. Then another side that I've seen with this pressure is certain times when you divvy out this pressure to someone, when you give someone a suggestion, that's pressure that like I said, all my life I've never thought of a suggestion being pressure on someone else, but it is a concept to think about. That pressure that you put on someone else, you might be driving them a certain way, not even knowing it. So me personally, with the whole consulting thing and everything, that's why I took a step back from things, and I evaluated things and watched them and seen how they were going. And I like the concept that I have now, because that pressure with the consultant work is taking some of the pressure off of people for marketing and stuff like that. People that are business prepared but not business savvy. That's been a major issue that I found, is that everybody can get out here and produce a great podcast, but not everybody's going to get out here and be able to have that nice promotional arm that they think that they should have. And there are some people that have that natural promotion to them, have that charismatic enigma or the charisma to get out there, and they can just sell water to a whale, sand in the desert. And that's one of those things that you're born with that type of talent. That's not something that's just given to you, and that's not something that's learned. I meant taught. So that's one of those deals where, with pressure and stuff like that, that's why I like what we got going on now. I can help alleviate some of that pressure. The other pressures you have are dealing with the realities of podcasts. Some people have fathomed up that podcasts actually have an alternate reality. Like, there's this person inside this podcast world, and then they go on to another world after they're done with their podcast. And in some places, just because of me being on this live circuit and actually being able to meet podcasters, talk to them, and things like that, even on a face-to-face basis now, I'm seeing a lot of it that, some people truly are living an alternate reality. And in my case, not that at all. But for some people, it's a facade. So when I'm listening now, and once I get to meet the people, everybody has a bravado to them. I'm not taking away from that, but some people are characters, some people are not characters. And inside these things, when working with the groups that I have, I've noticed that a lot of people have facades, and it's hard to keep that up day to day. And that type of pressure there is kind of hard. I always try to tell people to be very genuine about your podcast. If you're an actor or someone that has characters inside what you do, unless it's storytelling or that's the form of your podcast, you have to be very careful with that. And the other pressures are social media pressures. Social media pressures will get you in a whole lot of thick water for the simple fact that everybody has been prescribed this notion that, hey, I got to get out here on Instagram, I've got to put out advertisement, I've got to make videos, I've got to engage my audience really, really hard to get them to listen. And in some cases, some people will have to do that. I'm not saying that you're not. And then there's some people that are going to just have it come to them because of their gift of gander or whatever. So with the social media pressure, I tell everybody like this. I was a big fan of Hootsuite for a long time. Hootsuite started charging money and is only letting you do 3 posts. I'm posting primarily on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, that is a hard push that I actually have to do myself. But everything else, if you take your podcast and it's over on Spotify, you can share that podcast up and down everywhere, and it doesn't matter where your listeners come from. If they come from Spotify, that's where they come from, or Apple, they come from there. You can share from that app. You can share inside of most of any of these apps to put it on other social media. So the whole thing that I do is I structure out every Sunday. I take an hour or two, and I get out here and produce my podcast. My podcast will sit out, or the advertisements for it, I set those advertisements right out there on my business suite, which is made by Facebook. I'll put some on Facebook, some on Instagram, and I'll do a whole week's worth until the next Saturday or Sunday, just to stretch it out. The thing that I found that works is if you're doing advertisement 1 in the morning time, 1 in the evening, or closer to night, that's enough. So 2 posts a day, 7 days, that's 14 posts. And I engage my other podcasters and the other listeners when I have time to, you know. I don't turn on any notifications on there because I don't want that added pressure. And a lot of people think that you got to have your Facebook notifications on and your Instagram notifications on 24/7 for this. No, not at all. All you need to do is take a healthy time when you're ready to listen to any type of feedback and go from there. When it comes to guests and people that want to be on the podcast, I have solely instructed them to go to my email. You put it there, I'll give you a time and date, and we'll roll from there. That way you separate guests from the social media, and you can get out here with them and just work things out there. Just like with my podcast Collides, I always get together with these podcasts, see what we can do, and with them, don't put any added pressure on. See what works for their schedule, pin them in. I'll record an episode, and I'll go from there. Like I said, and then you're scheduling for your podcast. The one thing that you have to understand is you're your own blueprint for things. And with being your own blueprint, you put pressure on that blueprint on how you design it. That's just the only thing that I think that if we're talking about these pressures that come along with podcasting, that people should really, really think about. You're the architect. Sorry, I messed up on that word. But you're the one that's going to kind of have to be the one that says, hey, this is how this goes, this is how that goes, and blah, blah, blah. Not me or not anybody else that's helping you. That's the first thing that you have to lay out. And then after that, anybody else can help you find, critique it, or give you a few enhancements, such as me or Podcastagram, or anybody else out here that has some time to help you. That's just one of those things that you can do, you know. But that's about it, guys. Pressure is really tough in this business, and you really gotta take time for yourself, and not make your podcast like so intense that it's hurting you and giving you ulcers and stuff like that. Me personally, I just do my podcast, help out where I can, organize this little company, and go from there. Welcome back, guys. The last part of this podcast is going to be about those pressures. Those pressures we were talking about, they are facilitated facades. People will make pressure and will make things into to things that really don't even exist. Example, like inside when you're doing your podcast, for instance, people put an added pressure that you got to be this type of person on social media. You have to do this, so that, or you have to set to a certain mode. And that's not the thing that you're supposed to do here. You're supposed to kind of, like, in your own mind, and this is just like simple health that anybody does for themselves, or, you know, when you're dealing with pressure, you have to see why you're facilitating a facade. That's the hardest thing for so many people to do. So, for instance, a guy that's only got 1,000 listens on his podcast, for instance, thinks that he needs to get out here and express this and that, build up propaganda, and carry a crazy story around that when you fact check the story, when you do things outside of this
facade that they built up because they're facilitating it with pictures, memes, different stories, different things to hype it up. When you get to the nitty gritty part of it, you're realizing that this person has built this stuff all themselves. They made all this pressure for no reason. So that's one of the things like that I tell people when you're dealing with podcasts or when you're dealing with anything like that. You have to be your own handle. You have to sit back and really decide, hey, why am I facilitating a facade? A facade is something that is not real. It's something that is pushed hard uh, by mental processes, by actual deception of your mind. It's an actual deception that you're allowing to happen to yourself. So, like when the 1,000 listener compared to the 20,000, the guy that's got 20,000 listens, the difference between those two guys is generally this: the guy that's got 20,000 listens has decided in life or has made it a point that that pressure that the other podcaster is making, they're going to stop doing that. They're going to take that away. They're going to be like, why am I adding pressure to myself? The end result that we're taught as children and we're taught in our middle ages, as teenagers, is that this pressure is going to build a diamond. But that pressure doesn't always build that diamond. Sometimes that pressure gets forged harder and becomes coal. And we know what we do with coal. All we do with coal is burn it. We don't do anything else with it. We use it for warmth. And then when it's sludge and it's waste, we discard it. So why build that kind of pressure? Outside of that, it's just when you're doing these shows and you're getting your accolades and different things like that, if you keep a set mode to what you do, you don't have to worry about keeping up with the Joneses or um, like worry about the needs of someone else inside what you're doing inside of your podcast. You worry about yourself, how you're tailoring it, and how the delivery of your message is to your audience. Those are things that get that we lose track of when you start getting extra downloads here or there, or this and that happens. Like that's just one of those things that you just really have to sit there and be like, hey, man, um, I got certain goals, I've got certain things that I want to attain, but I'm not going to put pressure on these things. I'm going to let these things go like an escalator. There's no reason to go up in the elevator and try to have all this stuff really fast and all that other stuff, because at the end of the day, when you go up in the elevator and you get out there, it's fun. You have cheap thrills, you have all this excitement and all this great stuff. But then it comes a point where if you take in an escalator, it's a slow way, so you see things and you see how things format. You have time to process all that stuff. Taking the elevator to the top, after that cheap thrill's done, then you're just left empty. You're at the top of the floor, and then all of that pressure's coming back up in that elevator because you went up so fast and you didn't take time to rationalize these things. And that's why, like I say, like with the consultant and different things that we have going on, you set your own blueprint in life. You set your blueprint like with how you want this podcast to go. If you want to put a lot of pressure on yourself and build up all this stuff, then I would honestly sit there and tell you that that's not going to be successful. If you take time, take strides in what you're doing inside of it, like with the advertisement, you have to learn what works with people. If I didn't sit out there and put out 7 different memes and attract 21 different people with those memes, then I'm not hitting all the targets that I need. And I had to learn this because I would just only put out like 2 or 3 memes or whatever. And from there, it didn't always translate over because 2 memes compared to that 7 or so that I did. 7, it's so broad that Tim, Terry, and Jim will find something within that 7 that they like. And that's just trial and error. And that's the whole main thing that you have to do inside of your podcast is just trial and error, seeing what works and what does not work. And along that way, like when you monetize and you start making money, people start making pressure for themselves that facilitate a facade in this instance because they think that, hey, I'm making money, so now I've got to cater to a wider audience, a broader audience. If just 25 people are listening, and then 25 people like the shuck and jive and the dance and whatever you do inside your podcast every week, well, them 25 are loyal people, so those will be the people that I hold on to. And then from those 25 people, I will find 25 more people like them by inquiring with questions, different things that you can do to engage your audience. I engage my audience on a full level. The hardest thing with that, and it doesn't build any pressure, is real simple. Engage them in hobbies, having different outlets to engage with these people. These are the things that uh, build up that loyal audience and stuff like that. And then on a side note, with that pressure like that I've been going on and on about, you really have to sit back and, like I said, when you break down everything, because everybody should take 5 minutes a day. I do it personally in my own life. I take 5 minutes a day. I take 20 minutes in the evening, and I sit back with myself and I'm reflecting on what was my self worth for the day. What did I do to not have pressure on myself? What did I do not to make myself feel devalued? What did I not do? Just the thing right there. What did I not do to add all that pressure to myself? Because too many times people do so much and do all this other stuff, and they never go back to equate about that pressure. So once again, guys, thank you for listening, and we will have another inside or behind the scenes podcast. Thank you.